At family dinners, no one ever says what they really feel. No one asks the questions they actually want answers to, and no one ever looks at you for too long, unless something is wrong. That night started like every other dinner. Same table, same chairs, same silence that always felt too controlled to be natural. My plate was already placed before I even sat down, and no one ever asked where I wanted to sit. It had always been the same spot, slightly away from the center, like I was part of the family but never fully inside it. And maybe that should have been my first clue, but I didn't think about it then. Because when you grow up inside something, you stop questioning it. You just accept it. And that's where I made my mistake. My sister Claire called me earlier that day, and her voice was different. Not excited, not nervous, just careful. Like she was measuring every word before saying it. She told me something I had never heard from her before. She said she was bringing someone home tonight. I paused because Claire didn't bring people home. Not friends, not boyfriends, not even names were usually mentioned unless absolutely necessary. So hearing that sentence from her felt strange, like something out of place in a routine I had known my whole life. I asked her who it was, and there was a long pause before she finally said, "Daniel." Then she hung up. But I stayed standing there, repeating his name in my head like my mind was trying to store it somewhere important. Even though I didn't understand why it felt that way. The entire day felt off after that, even though nothing had actually changed. My mother was in the kitchen earlier than usual, my father was unusually quiet, and Claire didn't come out of her room until the doorbell rang exactly at 7:12 p.m. I remember the time because everything about that moment felt too precise, like it had been planned down to the second. My mother stopped chopping vegetables the instant the bell rang. Not before. Not after. Exactly at that moment. My father didn't move at all. He just listened. That silence stretched longer than it should have, like everyone was waiting for something they already knew was coming. Then Claire appeared and she looked different. Too perfect. Her hair was already in place, her clothes were smooth, and she was smiling before she even opened the door. That alone felt strange, because Claire didn't usually prepare emotions. She just had them. But that night it felt like she was wearing one. And then he walked in. Daniel. The moment he entered, something in the room shifted. I don't know how else to describe it. He wasn't nervous like most people are when meeting a family. He wasn't awkward or unsure. Instead, he looked around the room once, just once, as if confirming something, and then his eyes landed on me. And they stayed. Not briefly, not casually, but long enough for it to feel uncomfortable. Like he recognized something. Or someone. I didn't move. He didn't move either. And for a second that felt too long to be normal, it felt like something unspoken had already happened between us. Even though I had no memory of it. Claire introduced him. My mother immediately smiled too warmly, too quickly, like it wasn't natural. My father stood up to greet him, which he never did for guests. Never. That alone felt wrong, but I ignored it at the time. We all moved to the dining table without much conversation. Like everything was following a script no one was allowed to question. But the atmosphere wasn't normal. It was too quiet even for my family. Forks touched plates softly, chairs barely moved, and no one spoke unless absolutely necessary. Daniel sat across from me, and from the moment he did, he didn't stop looking at me. Not constantly, not openly, but in repeated glances. Every few seconds, his eyes would return to me like he was checking something again and again, as if I might change if he stopped looking. I lowered my gaze to my plate, hoping it would make things easier, but it didn't. Even without looking at him, I could feel it. His attention heavy and focused, like I was the center of something I didn't understand. My mother suddenly asked me about work, but her tone didn't sound like curiosity. It sounded like verification, like she already knew the answer, and was just making sure it matched something in her mind. I answered normally, but she didn't respond the way she usually does. She just nodded slowly, like she was confirming a detail. My father exhaled quietly, almost like relief, but I didn't understand what he was relieved about. That moment stayed in my mind longer than the conversation itself. Then Daniel spoke for the first time. His voice was calm but deliberate. He didn't look at my parents. He looked directly at me and asked how long I had lived here. The question was simple, but it didn't feel simple. It felt like it meant something else underneath. I answered without thinking, saying I had lived here my whole life. He repeated it slowly like he was testing it. Then he asked something that made the entire room feel different. He asked if I ever felt like something about my life didn't quite fit. The room didn't move after that. Not physically, but emotionally. Everything stopped. My mother didn't speak. My father didn't move. Claire looked down immediately, avoiding everything. I let out a small nervous laugh, trying to break the tension, but no one laughed with me. No one reacted at all. That was when my smile disappeared, and something unfamiliar started growing in my chest. Not fear exactly, something worse. Uncertainty about my own reality. After dinner, I said I needed water just to get away from the silence that suddenly felt too heavy to sit inside. I walked into the kitchen, expecting calm, but instead I heard voices. Low, sharp, urgent voices. My mother first, saying I didn't need to hear this yet. Then Daniel, saying I deserved to know. My father immediately said, not like this. Then Claire, almost whispering, begging for it not to be tonight. And then Daniel again, asking when, if not now. And then silence. A silence that felt heavier than all the words combined. I stepped forward without thinking, and the floor creaked beneath me. Every head turned instantly. Not surprised. Not confused. But prepared. Like they had been waiting for me to hear something I was never supposed to hear. And that was the first moment I realized something terrifying. I was not part of a conversation happening in my home. I was the topic of it. I stepped into the room without thinking. And the moment I did, everything stopped. The conversation didn't just pause. It collapsed into silence. My mother's hand froze midair. My father's eyes dropped instantly. And Claire, she looked like she had been caught doing something she had been preparing to deny. And Daniel? He didn't move at all. He was the only one who looked like he had been expecting me to appear. That was the part that unsettled me the most. Not surprise. Not panic. Expectation. I asked again, slower this time, my voice tighter. What are you talking about? No one answered. Not immediately. That silence wasn't empty, it was controlled. Like they were deciding how much truth I was allowed to hear at once. My mother finally tried to speak, but stopped halfway through her sentence. My father rubbed his forehead like the question itself was exhausting him. And Claire looked at Daniel, not me, like she was waiting for permission. That's when something inside me shifted. Because I realized something strange. They weren't confused. They weren't caught off guard. They were coordinated. Like this moment had been discussed before I ever walked into the kitchen. And that thought made my stomach drop. I turned to Daniel. Tell me, I said, but this time my voice didn't shake. Came out sharper than I expected. Tell me what's going on. He didn't answer right away. He looked at my parents first. Then at Claire. And only then at me. That order mattered. I didn't understand why yet, but I felt it. He finally spoke. You deserved the truth. But he said it like it wasn't just information. Like it was a weight he had been carrying for a long time. My mother immediately shook her head. This isn't necessary, she said quickly, almost too quickly. That was the first contradiction. If it wasn't necessary, why was everyone so afraid of it being said? Daniel ignored her. He stepped slightly forward, just enough that the distance between us felt smaller. We've met before, he said. I almost laughed. Came out automatically. No, we haven't. But he didn't react to my certainty. He just watched me carefully, like he was waiting for my denial to finish itself. Claire suddenly spoke, her voice breaking slightly. Daniel, don't. That was the second contradiction. If I had never met him, why would Claire sound like she was stopping something dangerous? My father stood up this time, but slowly, like the movement cost him something. Not now, he said again, but weaker than before. Not a refusal. More like a delay. Daniel didn't back down. Instead, he said something that didn't immediately make sense. 10 years ago, there was an accident. The word hit the room differently. My mother closed her eyes. My father looked away. Claire's hands tightened around the edge of the counter. I felt something flicker in my chest. Not memory, not clarity, just fragments. Images without context. Bright lights. The sound of something breaking. A voice calling my name but distorted. I blinked hard. I don't remember that, I said quickly, almost defensively, like forgetting was proof. But Daniel nodded slowly, like he expected that answer. "You're
My
not
breathing
supposed to
slowed
remember
without me
all
noticing,"
of it," he
What
said.
do you mean?
That line
Not
made the room
supposed to.
feel colder. No one answered immediately. That was becoming a pattern. Questions didn't get answers. They got pauses. Then Daniel did something I didn't expect. He took out his phone. Not dramatically. Not as a threat. Just calmly. Like he had already decided how this moment would end. He showed me a photo. First, I didn't react. I just stared at it. A girl. Same face. Same eyes. Same expression that felt too familiar to ignore. My stomach twisted slightly, but my mind rejected it immediately. "That's me," I said, because what else do you say when you see yourself staring back at you? But Daniel shook his head. "No," he said softly. "That's who you were before the accident." Something in my chest tightened. Not fear yet. Confusion. Sharp and immediate. "That doesn't make sense," I said quickly. "I am me." My mother finally spoke again, but her voice cracked this time. "Stop this," she said, but not to me. To him. That was important. She wasn't denying me. She was trying to stop him. That was the third contradiction. Because if this was false, why was she reacting like it was dangerous? Daniel didn't look at her. He kept his focus on me. "After the accident," he said slowly, "the real Eliza didn't survive in the same way." The words didn't land immediately. My brain resisted them like they were being translated into something I couldn't accept. I looked at my father. What is he talking about? He didn't answer. I looked at Claire. Tell me he's lying. Claire's eyes filled, but she didn't speak. That silence was worse than any answer. Daniel continued, quieter now. "Your family couldn't accept what happened, so they made a decision." That word decision felt wrong. I stepped back slightly. "What decision?" My mother finally broke. "We couldn't lose her," she said suddenly, like it had been trapped inside her for years. "We couldn't survive that." But she didn't say my name. Not once. And that was the moment everything started to fracture. Because I realized she wasn't looking at me like I was her daughter in that moment. She was looking at me like something she had tried to protect from a truth. I shook my head slowly. No, that's not possible." But even as I said it, I felt it. That strange disconnect I had always ignored. Moments where I didn't fully fit. Conversations that paused when I entered. Expressions that changed too quickly when I asked certain questions. Things I had always dismissed. But now they were starting to connect. Daniel took a breath. "You were brought into this family after the accident." The sentence should have made me angry. But instead it made me quiet. Because suddenly I wasn't rejecting it as strongly as I should have. And that terrified me more than anything he had said so far. My voice came out lower. "What are you saying I am?" No one answered. Not immediately. And in that silence, I understood something worse than truth. They weren't hiding what I was. They were hiding what I replaced. His silence after Daniel's last words felt different. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It felt heavy, like the air itself had changed shape. I stood there waiting for someone to deny it again, to laugh, to say it was a misunderstanding, something, anything that would make sense of what I was hearing. But no one did. My mother was crying silently now, not even trying to explain herself. My father looked like he had run out of strength to keep standing. And Claire, she couldn't even lift her eyes to me. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. No one was going to fix this. No one was going to save the version of reality I had grown up inside. I looked at Daniel again, my voice quieter now. "If none of this is true, then why does it feel like you're all remembering something I don't?" My question wasn't angry anymore. It was tired. Almost broken. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He just looked at me like he was choosing the gentlest way to destroy something. Then he spoke slowly. "Because part of you is real, and part of you was placed here." That sentence didn't make sense at first. My brain refused it. But my body reacted before my thoughts did. My hands felt cold. My chest tightened. And suddenly I couldn't remember the last time I had felt fully certain about anything in my life. I turned to my mother. "Tell me what he means." My voice cracked this time. "Tell me I'm your daughter." She flinched at the word daughter. Not because it was wrong, but because it hurt. And that was worse. She finally looked at me properly, and her expression wasn't denial. It was grief. We didn't have a choice, she whispered. We couldn't lose her completely. And in that moment, everything inside me went still. Because she still wasn't saying I wasn't her daughter. She was saying something worse. That I wasn't the original one. My father finally spoke, his voice low and broken. After the accident, we couldn't accept what happened. There were no options left. No answers. We just tried to survive it. I shook my head quickly, stepping back. Stop. Just stop. This doesn't make sense. But even as I said it, pieces of memory started pressing against my mind. Not full memories. Fragments. Hospital lights flickering too bright. A hand holding mine that I couldn't fully see. A name being called, but not always matching my face when I turned. And suddenly I realized something worse. I had never questioned those gaps before. Never once. Daniel stepped closer again, carefully. The real Eliza was the daughter they lost that day, he said. And after that, they couldn't let go of the idea of her. I looked at him sharply. So what am I then? He hesitated. That hesitation mattered. Then he said it. You are what they built to survive her absence. The room tilted slightly. Not physically but emotionally. Like the truth had weight and it was finally settling on me all at once. I looked at Claire, desperate now. Tell me you didn't believe this, I said. Tell me you still see me as your sister. Her lips trembled. She finally spoke, but barely. I didn't know at first, she whispered. I really didn't. I was a child. I just grew up with you and never questioned it until later. Until later, I repeated slowly. That phrase hurt more than anything else. Because it meant there had been a time when I could have been told. A time when the truth was already alive in the house, just never given to me. I stepped back again, my breathing uneven now. So what happens now? I asked, almost whispering. If I'm not who you say I am, then what am I supposed to do with that? No one answered immediately. That silence stretched longer than any answer could have. Then Daniel spoke quietly. That's not something we can decide for you. I let out a small laugh, but it broke halfway. That's funny, I said. Because my whole life feels like it was decided for me. My mother finally moved toward me slightly, as if she wanted to reach out, but stopped halfway. Her hand froze in the air. We gave you a life, she said softly. We tried to give you something stable. Something safe. But it wasn't mine, I whispered. And that was the moment everything inside me finally cracked. Not all at once, but slowly, like something long under pressure finally giving way. I looked around the room again. The same room I had eaten in my entire life. The same table. The same walls. And suddenly nothing felt familiar anymore. It felt like I was standing inside someone else's memory. That's when I understood the reason they had been staring at me all